You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 234, and my name is Clark from 5cardguys.com and 5cardguys on Instagram. It's just me again for this intro, but fingers crossed, we'll get the whole crew back together for next week's episode. But today, I was thinking about how I could do this regular Tuesday episode solo, and I had a few ideas. So, off the top, let's start with the growing bounty for the Topps Now triple autograph basketball card of LeBron, KD, Kevin Durant, and Stephen Curry. If you aren't keeping track or paying any attention lately, Jeff Wilson, aka Sports Card Investor, initially offered a $100,000 bounty on that one-of-one card, plus a VIP experience at his Cards HQ store, which includes a first-class flight to Atlanta, where the store is located, tickets to a Falcons, Hawks, or Braves game, and any box of sports cards sold in his store, including a National Treasures box if that's what you like. Then, Ken Golden, he announced his bounty, which was for $150,000 cash advance, non-refundable, plus the card goes up for auction on Golden Auctions, of course, and you get what it ultimately sells for, minus their consignment fees. Golden, he also offered a chance to be on his Netflix show, King of Collectibles, which I assume means there will be a season 3. So then, Jeff Wilson counters, upping his bounty to $250,000, and he's also partnering with Fanatics Collect and Sotheby's so that you can put the card on their auction site. And then the biggest offer to date, I believe, came from Grand Slam Collectibles. Their offer is for $500,000, with the only stipulation being that the autographs must be quote-unquote smudge-free. They said if you sell to them, it's going right into their personal collection. But if you don't want to sell, they're offering $10,000 just for you to let them hold the card and take a photo with it. Crazy times with all these bounty offers. So, you know what? I was going to save this until the end, but I'll just do our pick one segment right now. If you had the card, the triple auto Topps Now card of LeBron, KD, and Steph, which offer are you taking? Let me know. You can DM me at 5cardguys or at Cards to the Moon, both all one word, on Instagram. And maybe I'll do a poll as well once this episode comes out. But for me personally, I think I might go with Jeff Wilson's offer. And let me explain. If I was just going for straight cash, I definitely go with Grand Slam Collectibles, right? The $500,000 offer is pretty insane and is probably your best bet in terms of maximizing your financial return. But if you have a business or brand, like 5Card Guys or, even for this podcast, Cards to the Moon, at least with Jeff Wilson's offer, you get the $250,000 guaranteed with the auction upside of getting even more. But you also get the exposure with getting featured on their popular YouTube channel. And the auction itself will draw more attention to both the card and for you, the seller. In fact, ideally, if I'm really thinking about it, I would rather be featured on King of Collectibles on Netflix, has a bigger audience. So maybe I can negotiate with Golden saying, hey, if you match Jeff Wilson's offer, then we have a deal. So for this pick one, I'll go with Jeff's offer unless Golden matches it. All right. What about you guys? Let me know. And it'll be interesting to hear what you guys have to say. All right. We'll end this show then with hobby headlines. So since it's just me and I don't want to be talking the whole time, I thought what I do for this episode is that I play clips from the panel discussion that Hyung and I attended at Fanatics Fest New York City with Michael Rubin and Travis Scott. You might also hear Michael Strahan, who is the moderator in this discussion. But because this is a sports card podcast, we'll focus more on what Rubin had to say about FanFest. And as part of this segment, I'm going to offer some improvements that can be made for the next big event they host. All right, let's start with this first clip where Rubin talks about why he started Fanatics Fest and how it came together.
What was your vision for this event, and why was it important for you to have the first one here in the greatest city in the world, in New York?
Yeah, so I didn't understand how this didn't exist in sports. It made no sense to me. Zero. I've been to these trading card shows, incredible fans, incredible collectors, but I thought I was like 30 years ago. It didn't look right. And I went to Comic-Con here at Javits. It was insane. I'm like, if Comic-Con can have 250,000 people show up dressed in their costumes, showing their fandom, how the hell did we not have that for sports? And I literally walked out of here. I said, find the guy who started New York Comic-Con. That guy's coming to Fanatics. We're starting Fanatics Fest. Let's go. And that's literally, it happened 14 months ago. And here we are.
You know, I was trying to think about if what Rubin said was true about there not being a sports festival like this before. And the only thing I could think of is some professional sports teams holding community days where they have a few things to do for the kids, like, you know, those pitching booths where they clock how fast you can throw, or being able to run the bases, that kind of thing. But definitely nothing like Fanatics Fest. If you've been there, it's kind of a one-of-a-kind thing. So kudos to the team for organizing a great event. All right, in this next clip, Strahan, he asked Rubin, how does he know what untapped market in sports or in business to go after? I think his answer provides a little more insight in how he got into trading cards on a more general level. So yeah, take a listen.
For me, you know, I think people know my story. I barely made it out of high school. I didn't go to college. The way I learn is by getting great people around me, and we all learn from each other. So I'm always learning from you. I'm always learning from Trav and picking things up. And that helps drive strategy overall. Like, to me, you have no chance to be successful in business if you don't start with the right strategy. If you don't have the right overall idea, then you need the right people, some luck and timing, and other things that go with it. But to me, it's all about learning from who's around me. I remember, I was just thinking as I was listening to you talk about kind of the influence that Trav has. It's interesting because for me, I knew him as my friends' friends, like, you know, James Harden's boy. That's how I, first met you. And then he said to me 4 or 5 years ago, come by my crib, I want to show you all the different things I'm doing. And I remember, like, not really thinking about it, but going to your house and you're saying, here's what I'm doing with McDonald's, and here's what I'm going to do with Dior, and here's what I'm doing with Nike, and here's what I'm thinking about in trading cards. And I was like, the product vision he had was infectious to me and actually made me better. That's the way I drive my strategy, is asking questions. There's no dumb questions, by the way. Like, I ask unlimited questions. And so just ask those questions, figure out what works for you, get the right people around you, and good follows.
Okay, so this next clip is a good segue to what we just heard from Rubin about collaborating with the right people. And one person he's done that with is Travis Scott. If you're not familiar with him, he's a multi-million-dollar rapper now, big social media following. And what he did recently was he launched the first ever collegiate-inspired apparel collection with Mitchell & Ness, a Fanatics-owned company, earlier this year. And in this clip, he talks a little about the Travis Scott Cactus Jack Topps Chrome trading cards that was exclusively sold at Fanatics Fest NYC. And before I play the clip, just to give you a little more context about these cards, only 1,000 boxes were available, and you had to enter a draw for the chance to even buy a box that went for $300 retail. Anyway, those boxes were being flipped right away for, I saw, up to $2,000 right at the show. But the last sale on eBay, I just looked it up, it sold for $2,950 US, which is just insane.
Well, let me jump in for 1 second to say the one thing with Trav that I've learned, he will never do anything that's not 100% authentic to him.
Important.
And that's the test, right? There's no amount of money, no deal anyone could ever give you to do something if it wasn't really brand right for you. And the most crazy thing is to see how much energy you put in to each product you build. I mean, when we did that collab you talked about, it was one of the first times I said to our company, let Trav do whatever he wants because he's that good. Don't try to be that medium or bigger company that tries to say, hey, you know, give us your ideas and we'll do it. Just let him do his thing. And the product was amazing.
Amazing,
okay?
yeah.
And with the trading cards that we launched earlier today that are spectacular, you designed them, we didn't. And so I think part of it's enabling creativity. When you know you have the best people in the world around you, you got to enable creativity.
Okay, so I wanted to get a Travis Scott clip in this episode, and here he talks about Rubin being very accessible and just unlike other CEOs of billion-dollar companies, in the way he does things he doesn't have to do himself, but likes to do anyway. And listen, I know in the hobby, Michael Rubin, he's a polarizing figure, but I feel like I can say this with some impartiality since, you know, I'm not being paid in any way by Fanatics, and that is, I tend to agree with what Travis Scott says here in this clip. For example, just a week after FanFest in NYC, I see him on Instagram at the Burbank Card Show in California, just walking through the different booths set up there. Anyway, here's what Travis said.
One thing I can say is like, I hate corporate people and shit like that. So,
I'm very corporate, right?
So my first time, like, you know, meeting people that could run a company like Michael is like, it's just like worth billions of dollars. It's rare. I tell them this shit all the time. It's rare to find somebody that's actually tapped into the business from like a top seat all the way down to the bottom. One thing I always hated is when I signed to a record label, it's like you'll meet the CEO of the record label, they'll give you a product manager, they give you an A&R, and you'll think that you'll talk to the CEO every day, but you'll never talk to them ever again for the rest of your life. You'll be stuck with, you know, the fifth or the sixth person in line who might not be working there in the next 7 months. And so what I've always, you know, loved about this guy is that, like, hey, man, I've never met somebody that sits in the seat where he does not have to do this. He does not have to, you know, spend 14 months to do a, you know, Fanatics thing because he walks around and is like, why is it sports as cool as anything else? Doing these talks to also give you guys the information back, I think is also like key, right? And so to have somebody like this, I think is important for other people that sit in that seat or have corporations that's worth 50, 60, hundreds of billions of dollars to never lose sight of the consumer or the people that actually support the business. And I think that's the number one thing, right? I get motivated by seeing him, you know, see the challenges ahead, see what the consumer wants. And it's a lot of people, you know, all these offices, all these employees, mad fans, and to try to answer every question, try to give it back to y'all, whether it's MLB, NFL, NHL, anything that got to do with fans, sports, anime, whatever the you know, it's kind of like cool to have somebody that can lead that charge, so.
All right, I like this clip because it's something we talked about on this pod before, and that's one major advantage Rubin has is his relationships with some of these A-list athletes and celebrities. You know, they certainly helped draw people to Fanatics Fest in NYC, no doubt. And the hope for us as hobbyists was that some of these hardcore sports fans who came to the event would also be introduced to the hobby with a card show set up on the other side of the venue. Now, the second thing you'll hear in this clip is how he actually welcomes feedback. So actually, I'll hold off here and talk about that specifically right after we play this clip.
I do agree there's no job that's too big or too small for me. So as we set this up, I mean, we came up with the idea 14 months ago. In the last month, I'm sitting there talking to you about your schedule, talking to Brady about a schedule, calling you and say, hey, can you do me a favor, come do this? Because like, I want to make sure it's as good as it can be. And I keep asking everyone, don't tell me what you liked about this. Tell me what you didn't like, so we can be that much better next year. So I say the other thing is just having an unrelenting desire to keep getting better and then push that through the whole company. Because we ain't ever done and we ain't ever rested. And, you know, I hate big companies because they become complacent. Yeah. And what I want to be is the most entrepreneurial, great brand. I want Fanatics to become the most beloved. Like, if I'd say in 10 years from now, I look out, I'd say, what do I want my kids to think? It's their dad built the most beloved sports brand, one of the most beloved brands in the world, and we haven't even got started yet for that, and that's why we're so just like laser focused on it.
I feel like it's been a FanFest loving until this point, but there's definitely room for improvement for the next event. And since Rubin says he welcomes feedback and constructive criticism, here's two off the top of my head. First, there was a stage set up near the Topps Hobby Hall area where you had some notable breakers do a live break, such as the Blez brothers. They did a break with Peyton Manning. Mojo was there at one point. And Jesse from Sports Card Nonsense, he also recorded a pod there. So the problem is, in my opinion, there were just too many distractions around the stage. I actually kind of felt bad for some of the guys that tried to do their thing, but only a few people were paying close attention. Now contrast that to the theater stage where you have dedicated seating and the panel discussion, like the one you're hearing now with Rubin and Scott. People are actually focused on what's going on stage. Now I know breakers and sports card podcasters, they won't draw the same number of people, but I'm sure they could still maybe set up a smaller stage that's not right in the center of all the traffic of all the different sports card booths. And maybe you have to do a little more to incentivize people to come and attend. Like, why not give free sports card packs or even hold a draw for some great sports card boxes or prizes? I think that might do the trick. And two, maybe instead of segregating the sports part of FanFest and the sports card section from each other, there could be more of an integration. You know, I like Cage Lawyer's idea where he said on his own YouTube channel that you could place the sports card vendors in front of all the sports activations and demonstrations so that people who come to FanFest, they have to go through the different booths before getting to the other parts of the show. Or the center stage on the other side of the venue, the sports part of the venue, which I thought had a much better setup than the hobby stage, maybe there it could feature some talks about the hobby instead of just straight sports talk. Now I'm thinking I should have saved some of these ideas for our Just a Thought segment, but maybe I'll just do one with Hyung and John next time they're on the pod. All right, moving on. Next clip, I wanted to play this because this really reminded me how fast Fanatics has moved to be the company they are now and the impact they've already made in the hobby. Like Rubin says, only 3 years ago, we just knew Fanatics as an online apparel e-commerce business. Now they're immersed in the world of collectibles and trading cards, as well as sports betting. And from the sounds of it, it doesn't sound like they're about to slow down anytime soon.
Look, we obviously reinvented our company 3 years ago to where we were only in the commerce fan gear business to now having 3 business: collectibles and trading cards, commerce and merchandise, and online sports betting. And that was a giant transition for us, one that's been great. But I mean, I've had so many abysmal failures in my life as well, but generally speaking, each disaster has turned into the next huge success because I take so many learnings from it to say, how are we going to be better? And it's funny, like just thinking about this, you're talking about what you're picking up, you know, what are you taking away from this? And I'm asking everyone questions. What did we not get right? How do we be better? Because it's just that mentality to everything we do. But you're in business, you're always taking, you know, W's and L's, and that's why you play the game. If not, if anyone is winning all the time, they ain't taking enough shots.
And it ain't that fun if you're winning all the time.
Well, I wouldn't mind winning all the time, but it's not possible.
Okay, last clip. If you're wondering if Rubin reads any of the comments online, you'll get your answer here. And right after this clip, I'll close this episode with a few final words.
Yeah, look, I think for a company that has the aspirations and dreams that we have, the most important thing is to always listen to your fans. Like, you got to listen to them because without you guys in here, we got no business, zero business, okay? Without you guys in here, he's got nothing. So to me, it's the fans that drive everything. And then you got to be authentic. I mean, if that's the one thing I've learned, you got to be authentic to what you're doing. But we are, like, one of my worst habits that I love, if that makes sense, I can't stop myself from looking at what people are saying online, and then I just figure out, are they right or are they wrong? Yeah.
You look online at comments.
Like, I wake up, what's going on? I go to bed, what's going on? It doesn't mean I always agree, okay? There are times I'm like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. There's a lot of times I'm like, they're right, and we got to listen better, and it's driven our strategy. So, yeah, I think listening to your customers is everything. Since today, I've had 2, 30, 40-minute meetings with groups of customers, ask them what we can do better. I'm asking people like crazy at Fanatics Fest what we can do better. So you got to listen to your customers. If you don't do that, you got.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode. That's all I got. But before I leave, I think I teased this in last Friday's episode, but I just want to say, even before this panel discussion got started, the atmosphere was crazy. And no, it's not because people really wanted to see Michael Rubin. The Travis Scott fans were out in full force, and it was getting rammed in line. There's a bunch of security and patrol officers to make sure everyone entered safely. So a big shout out to them, because we were near the front with our press passes and we weren't sure if they're going to let us in first. Luckily for us, they eventually did, so we avoided any kind of rush to find seats. But by the end of it, everything was fine, even with Travis Scott doing an impromptu 2-song concert on stage, which was pretty awesome. So just to close off, the next Fanatics Fest, it'll be in Pittsburgh, I believe right in PNC Stadium where the Pittsburgh Pirates play for this September. And the big one for card collectors will be in Orlando, November 1 to 3, which I'm trying to convince my wife to go to as a quote-unquote family vacation. I'll let you know how that goes. All right, thanks to Fanatics for providing the audio footage of the panel discussion. And thank you guys, our listeners, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate us wherever you listen to your podcast. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk next Tuesday. See you later. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.